Let's use this beginner-friendly trick to do ombre nails with dip powder. So generally I use the tap method to create my ombres with dip powder, but after doing a French ombre last week, someone in the comments suggested the scrub method. So the scrub method for achieving an ombre look with dip powder is a lot more beginner-friendly because you can actually control and scrub exactly where you want the ombre effect to take place. So it gives you a lot more control over the look rather than just like tapping the powder on. But I'm gonna be totally honest with you guys. I tried this method a while ago. I totally messed it up. I hated it. I never wanted to do it again. But I did my research and I figured out 3 reasons why I messed it up and how you can successfully do a dip powder ombre with this method without repeating my mistakes. So number 1, you need to scrub a more pigmented, darker powder into a lighter powder. So if you're trying to do 2 light powders, this technique is not gonna work very well. Essentially, you're taking a light powder and then you are staining it by scrubbing in that darker color. So that's why you need to have this variance between the 2. And reason number 2, you have to let that base liquid dry after you dip into the lighter colors, and then brush away all the excess powder first before you start scrubbing. This is definitely where I messed up. I created a whole big mess by not doing that. And reason number 3, your final dip layer should be with a clear powder. The reason, and if we think about that whole staining idea, clear powders are the easiest ones to stain. So by applying that clear layer at the end, it's gonna make that ombre effect pop when you scrub in the darker pigmented color. So today, I'm giving the scrub method another chance. I'm bringing you guys along with me, and together we are going to master the scrub method so we can get a great dip powder ombre. Let's do it. So I'm starting my brush just below the halfway point, and I'm gonna push back to halfway, pull forward, and I'm gonna apply my base liquid first to the bottom half of the nail. The other thing you wanna make sure that you do is cap your edges because we don't wanna ruin this with chips. And go ahead and dip in your powder. Now we're gonna repeat this on every single finger, and then once that base liquid is dry, we're gonna grab our brush and we're gonna brush off all that excess powder before we get into the next dip. Now I wanna continue building up my apex, so on this dip, we're gonna go 3/4 of the way up the nail, but we are gonna start the scrub method. So starting your brush at the halfway point, we are gonna push up to the 3/4 mark and pull down. And then we are gonna apply that liquid to the bottom 3/4 of the nail, and then we are also gonna cap the edges on this dip as well because I wanna chip this. That would be terrible. And then go ahead, dip, tap off your excess powder, and then we're just gonna continue to do each finger like this before we start scrubbing because we wanna make sure that base liquid is dry before we do anything else. Trust me, I've learned scrubbing too early is gonna mess us up and we don't want that to happen. So once that base liquid is dry, we're gonna grab our brush, we're gonna brush away all the excess powder. Then we're gonna grab a smudge brush. So I'm literally using an eyeshadow smudge brush with a little bit thicker bristles than what we would normally do for the tap method of an ombre. And then we're gonna grab our darker powder and we're gonna dip our brush into the powder, and we are just going to quite literally scrub this color in. Now, this is definitely a trust the process manicure. You're not gonna see a whole lot happening, but as you continue to build this color with more layers, you're gonna see that ombre effect. Now for this first layer, I'm gonna scrub a little bit higher, so I'm gonna go up to that halfway point. And then once we've scrubbed it in really well, we're gonna grab our brush and we're gonna wipe away all that excess powder before we go into our next dip. And we're gonna get our trusty toothpick handy because we're gonna be dipping the entire nail this time. We're gonna start in the middle of the nail. We're gonna push all the way back as close to the skin as possible, but without touching the skin, and pull forward. We're gonna apply that base liquid in a nice even coat across the entire nail. And then grab our trusty toothpick and we're just gonna trace those cuticle lines to make them nice and neat. So now that we've applied that full dip, we're gonna grab our brush, we're gonna brush off all that excess powder. We're gonna take our more pigmented powder again and our brush, and we are going to dip into the powder and we are going to scrub like we've never scrubbed before. You do wanna apply like a fair amount of pressure to really get that staining action happening, so don't be afraid to push down and really get that powder in there. And then continue to do this process on all of your nails. And then once you're done scrubbing, we're gonna grab our brush and we're gonna wipe off all that excess powder before we do our next coat. So we're gonna set our lighter color aside and we're gonna grab a clear powder, and this is where the ombre really starts to take effect because clear powder is the easiest one to stain. So we're gonna do our 4th dip with clear powder to encapsulate, and we're also going to continue staining the bottom to really bring out that ombre. I absolutely missed this step the first time, so definitely make sure you do it. Taking our clear powder, we're gonna apply base liquid to the entire nail, again starting in the middle of the nail, pushing back all the way to the skin without touching the skin, and then pulling forward. And then we're gonna apply a nice thin layer across the nail. And then we are going to dip into our clear coat, tap off the excess, grab your toothpick, run it along those cuticle lines to make sure they're nice and clean. And then we're going to brush away all that excess clear powder. We're going to grab a darker pigmented color and we're going to scrub that in closer to just the tip this time, so that way it's the darkest point. We're going to brush off all that excess powder. You can really see that ombre showing now. And to make sure that we don't mess up any of that hard work, scrubbing as hard as we were, we're going to take our clear powder and we're going to encapsulate by applying base liquid to the entire nail, dipping it in the clear powder, and then we're ready to activate and buff. This is like miles ahead of where I was last time when I tried to do this method. This is so much easier. The first thing I'm going to do is just take my curve file. We're just going to go around the top of our nail and we're just going to blend it into the natural nail. And then to shape the dip, I just like to go down one side and down the other side and along the top just to get out all the major lumps and bumps that we. And then once everything's smooth, I just like to go around and sharpen up all those edges. And then to get everything super smooth and ready for top coat, I'm going to grab my little orange buffer block and I'm just going to gently buff it out. And once we're all buffed out and smooth, we're going to apply our second coat of activator. And then once we do that, we're going to take a lint-free wipe. We're going to wipe away all of that excess activator. This is an important step to prevent your top coat brush from hardening. Once that's done, we're going to grab our shiny little top coat. And on this first layer, we're just going to do 3 very quick strokes. I guess we want to use top coat, not activator. Oi, 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 Kayla. Okay, let's do this again. We're going to grab our top coat this time and we're going to apply 3 very quick strokes to the nail. And then we're going to go in right away with our second layer, this time being more precise, and we're going to make sure that we cap our edges just by running the brush along the free edge. This is going to make sure that we don't have any chips. Look at that ombre. That is nice. That is really nice. I'm going to finish it off with my favorite cuticle oil. I'm just going to apply that to each nail and massage it in. And that's how we do an ombre with dip powder using the scrub method. I have to say I'm impressed. This absolutely went so much better than last time. You've got to try it. Now before you scroll, don't forget to give a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss any DIY nail tutorials or nail inspo.